The other thing we need to do, allied to that, in helping people to understand the changes to accelerate coping skills. I confess to not knowing what the first name of Ferguson is. I don't think it's Alex, but I think it's true to say that each of us guards a gate to change that's only open from within. I think the key thing for all of us is to provide the opportunity for people to do that. We can't make people change. We can't even make them like the change. What we can do is we can provide the opportunity and the resources to help them develop their change strategy. It can be madly frustrating when people don't get there as fast as you do. It can be horribly frustrating when they get stuck in the past. What we can do with different interventions and different thoughts and different ways, depending on how we work, is to help people to accelerate their coping skills and to get through. And that is kind of the key thing about it. It is especially important for those who are unfamiliar with the situation. They don't actually have anything to draw on because they haven't been here before. I think the key thing for me around helping people to understand the change is it's about steadying the base. All of it starts from the self, and here's the real psychologist coming out of me, so I apologise for it for just 2 minutes. It is about steadying the base, because if people psychologically understand why change is happening and how they feel about it, and if we help them to develop their change strategy and their coping skills, then they are better equipped to deal with the social aspects and the organisational aspects of change that then pile on top. If my base is not steady, for those of you familiar with transaction analysis, if I'm feeling not okay, then the other stuff is just heaping and heaping and heaping more torture on top of it. It doesn't mean that I like it, and doesn't mean that I'm happy with it, but if I understand how it's happening and why it's happening, and if I can help myself and others through it, even if I'm not quite there, if I can get to some version of okay, then I can actually help to pull this thing through. If I'm not okay, and if I stay stuck and not okay, then we have a real difficulty. Particularly when I'm a survivor and I'm supposed to carry this organisation through to the future, that's a really bad place to be. The second thing that I think is important is supporting the survivors of change to engage. Not communicate with employees, as John has said earlier, John number 1, during organisational change is a major mistake. The line managers, the survivors of change, play a huge role in this. You can't not communicate. Everything you say, everything you do, will communicate. So you have to try and capitalise on that and make it positive. What we do know is that people's ability to process information under stress is reduced by about 80%. So people go into fight-flight. You know, I get very angry and I can't listen, or I just deny and I can't listen. A couple of things help. Some very simple guiding principles. This is stuff that Diageo has done over and over and over during each of the big changes that they've been through, and there is a kind of a core communication piece. Some simple stuff, you're probably familiar with it. Keep it simple, short, face-to-face. Recognise and answer the main concerns. Often we kill ourselves with detail, we get right down into the nitty-gritty and have to be able to talk about everything. The main concerns are normally where people want you to be. 3 simple messages, max, is all that people can take. So we often organise kind of 2-hour briefings with loads of detail. 3 messages is probably about all that people can take when they're at the early stages of change. Repeat the key messages and give people a written copy, because people don't hear. There's only about 20% functioning going on, so they don't get it. And using analogies or visual images help. These stick in the mind better than words. Communicating in time of change is a particular skill. I do honestly believe that we need to support our managers in particular to be better at it. And it is more than just presenting. It is about listening, it is about questioning, it is about engaging. And often managers who are your survivors of change stand back. Either they're paralysed themselves or they're not sure what to say. I do believe we need to actually help them to be better at doing it and hold their hands. And it's practical, you know. I've talked about the first one there, which is more than presenting. The second one is that very quickly, once your organisation is restructured, gone through the change, you're back on the delivery and the performance promise again. You actually need those managers to be talking to their people, they need to be recontracting around what's to be delivered, and they need to get back into how do we turn this juggernaut around and how do we start moving it forward? What do we do on a day-to-day basis? Getting our performance mechanisms back working again. And to do that, they need to be able to communicate and engage. And I think we do need to support their skills around it. The final one, I promise. Your bums are probably getting numb sitting down with all of this. And this is really about, I suppose, capitalising on probably the management or the leadership development that all of us have been doing. to a greater or lesser degree over the years. We need to kickstart it. Once the change is done, we need to kickstart it, because what I have often found is that managers, team leaders, supervisors forget. It's a bit like when they put all that stuff in the coffin, they put all the skills from the old days in there as well, and they look at you and they say, well, what now? And you kind of go, did we not do all that stuff? Did we not do our leadership program? Did we not do management development? Did we not give you your supervisory skills? Did we not do kind of high performance coaching, or whatever we called it? And they kind of go, oh no, was I supposed to bring that forward? Is that? Now, not as literally as that, I know I'm being facetious, but sometimes they leave that behind. I think you actually need to intervene to kickstart that and pull that forward and say, use it. We'll remind you, we'll do a quick refresh, and now get on with it. And you know, there's an element of brutality about that, which is performance has to continue. We use a model in Harmonics, which is what we call our lead manage coach model. It's essentially pulling leadership, management and coaching together. The reason that we do this is because of this. On the management side, and indeed some of the leadership side, it is predominantly about the what, and a lot of it is given by the organisation. So your job description, who you work with, and the performance appraisal process, you know, the pay and rations, a lot of that is determined by the organisation. A lot of leadership stuff is too. You know, I can't just go and rewrite the values for my organisation because I feel like it. And I can't just go up there and say, well, I'll be MD because you're doing a crap job. Those sort of things are given in the leadership arena. What is not a given, and which is totally at our discretion, the discretion of the people that we work with, is how we go about doing our jobs. And that's really what you want people to get to post-change. You want them to unlock the discretionary energy that is in people and get that moving again, because that often also goes on pause. You know, so I'll wait and see how this is going to work out before I decide that I'm going to go and actually put my energy into this new organisation. You can't afford to wait. You've already gone through a restructure because times are tough. You can't afford to have managers and employees on pause. So the way to do that is to start to kickstart back into some of those skills. I'm not talking about doing big things, I'm not talking about big interventions. I'm talking about urgently and quickly saying, how do we apply the stuff we already have to the new roles, to the new performance goals, to getting ourselves back into new working relationships here quickly. And that's literally what needs to happen, helping people to navigate the new world. I do believe you sometimes have to handhold, or at least you have to kind of give a kickstart to handholding to help people along. We can assume that people will do this. They don't always do this. And I think the key thing for me, and I know I saw it in Diageo, the one program that was never stopped even when training was suspended was high performance coaching. Because at its core, it was about really understanding what helps people to perform and unlocking the discretionary energy. And as you'll see at the bottom there, apologies for those at the back, I know some of the lower stuff is difficult to see. Understanding what motivates performance is key in a post-change period. Unlocking discretionary energy, fine-tuning manager skills to help the new organisation to be successful. I guess if I go back to my plea from the start, this bit is often the Cinderella bit. So it's kind of, we'll handle the restructure, we'll do the outplacement because it's very important to treat the people who are leaving well. And I absolutely do believe that both of those things are very important. The difficulty is that we often say we'll get to it later. We'll support the survivors of change later, we'll go back and we'll kickstart the skills later. We'll help them, they actually didn't communicate very well during this change. We must put that on a list somewhere and teach them how to be better communicators for the next time we change. It's never too late to start. I think it is hugely important to manage the change well and to treat those who are leaving fairly and equitably. But I think it's also hugely important to consider those who are going to be here on the ride for the long haul. And I think it is too late to leave that for a couple of months after the change. I think those who are going to be here for the long haul are those who actually intervene early around the survivors of change and help those as best they can through to a new organisation. And they are the future of the organisation after all. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.